pretty fascinating that this is, it's available to people, and it's another reason why home ownership, in my opinion anyway, will trump renting, even if it is a little bit more expensive on a month-to-month
Totally.
in certain markets.
Totally. And I think it's just because of that extra factor. It's like the appreciation that you should most likely get.
Sure.
On a yearly basis, and then the ability to force appreciate a property.
Welcome to the Ottawa Property Podcast with your hosts Tony McNeil and Adolfo ALVARENGA. Each week, they'll take a look at what's happening in the Ottawa real estate market and offer practical advice and insights for listeners. From market updates to success stories, they cover it all. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, a seasoned investor, or just curious about the property landscape in Canada's capital, they've got you covered. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ottawa Property Podcast. My name is Tony McNeil. I am a realtor based here in Ottawa, Canada, joined always by my co-host, Adolfo ALVARENGA, level level 2 mortgage agent with Referral Mortgages, also based here in Ottawa. If you're listening on the audio platforms, and we know that you are, I can see it. I'm following the analytics. It's creeping up and up and up. Please leave us a comment. Share it with someone. Like it. I don't know. Listen to it twice. I don't know.
Send us an email.
Listen to it
Send
the first
us an
time.
email. Send us a text.
Listen to it the first time in regular playback, and then you can double it or triple it on YouTube and just go
fast forward.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like a fast forward.
Give us more views. Give us more views.
Yeah, guys, thanks for joining us. We got a fun episode. We're going to talk about some refinancing and pulling some equity out, forcing some equity into properties. I think it's going to be pretty useful, especially considering we haven't seen the crazy year-over-year price increases that people have been accustomed to in the last 5 years.
Yes.
So, that being said, Adolfo, what's up, man?
How's it going? How's your week?
It's good.
It's been a good week.
Beautiful Friday. It's a perfect temperature today.
Oh man, the day started so mellow, but now it's like sunshine and everything outside.
I
it's
walked the
perfect.
dogs, 6:30, and it was gray.
Yeah.
Kind of windy.
Yeah, very windy.
It's garbage day in my neighborhood on Friday, so it's always very noisy. It wasn't very peaceful, but now it's gorgeous, man.
Yeah,
it's not too hot. I think
it's going to be a good weekend, I'm supposed to say.
I think Sunday they were saying it's going to be like
thunderstorms?
35, feels like 40.
Linen pants. Linen everything.
Yeah. Jeez, imagine.
No, but that's good. But let's get to it. Refinancing, equity out. So should we explain what's what?
Yeah, why don't you start us off?
Okay, excellent. So refinancing. Refinance, or what we essentially sometimes call equity takeouts. It just kind of depends on what your preferences are. What are you doing this for? Refinancing, basically your current mortgage, either it's at maturity at the time that your mortgage expires and your term expires, or sometimes you were to do it in the middle of your term, which means that you most likely will be paying a prepayment penalty. So essentially the point or the objective of it is to take funds from the equity that the property has created based on the time that you purchased it to the time that you want to do the refinance, or if you, in some cases, for some investors, they usually do it every so often, especially when it comes to rental properties. Either everyone's goals are completely different, right? The main objective is to take funds out as long as you are, and there's a caveat, as long as you're able to qualify for those extra funds, to either pay credit cards or buy an investment property, spend it at the casino.
Yeah, I'm going to say,
go
you
on
can do
a
whatever you want
trip,
with this.
whatever you want at that
Earn
point. And you can essentially take that out, whatever your goals and objectives are, and use those funds. So this is where we kind of suggested, okay, it kind of depends on what you're planning on. What are your objectives? Is we have a conversation with clients, and it's just okay, what are your long-term goals for? Are you going from, and a lot of times that we see this, especially before COVID, we saw this often, where it was a solo income earner had a condo or a townhome that they bought 2019, 2018.
Sure.
And then came 2021, 2022, they were refinancing it to take the equity out that had equity that had been created during that time.
Substantial equity too,
And-
right? We're talking about the upward trajectory of the curve in terms of pricing throughout the pandemic.
Oh, big time.
Early pandemic.
Big time. So then they took out the equity to then purchase another property with their new spouse or their new significant other to then buy a bigger home. And they would keep the original one as a rental.
Yeah.
So they became investors in that way. They have a rental property that's like, obviously they're creating income, not just income from the rental income, but also creating equity as the years go by on that property.
And it's paying down the mortgage too, right?
And it's paying down the mortgage.
Forget that, people.
Exactly. And especially in those times, like a lot of the rates were lower.
Sure.
So if you were locked in, it kind of gave you, depending obviously locations, area, the type of properties, a lot of the times the rents would cover the expenses of the property. So they would just break even.
Especially if you bought your condo pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Condo or townhome.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever
Like, if
property you were talking about.
I mean, if you bought something in 2019 and you refinanced it today, you're still going to do okay on it.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly if you refinanced it like end of 2021, early 2022, you probably refinanced at the peak.
Yeah.
Which means you probably still really did, you got what you needed to get out of it. I don't doubt that. But, I guess my kind of thought process on this was that, what about the people that bought, say if you bought in 2020, 2022 mid or 2023, and we haven't seen kind of crazy equity gains over the top, but you do, I'm certainly someone who's going through it right now as myself. Like, how do we position people to refinance? Because maybe they come to you and they say, hey, I've got debt, I want to buy something else, whatever the case may be. And there's not a lot of equity built on the property. Like, what are some strategies that you see, and probably from an investor space for sure, that would, what we call like forcing equity into a property? Because I'm just thinking, like, there's lots of people out there that experienced, they bought, like I said, pre-COVID, and they did really well on it, no problem. But what if there's not a lot of equity in the property?
So
someone wants to access it.
Everyone is a case by case, and I say this very clearly. Like, yours and somebody else's would be completely different.
Understood.
Just because of property location, property type, incomes, and the way that. But ways to do what we call force appreciation is you renovate the property in some ways that it'll create some value. So this is where sometimes it gets tricky, because let's say, for example, on a personal aspect, if I renovate the back deck, personally for me is an improvement that has value, let's say.
But does the bank see it that way if something already exists?
So that's why I'm saying no, because like if you change faucets, light fixtures, and stuff like that, an appraisal will come and will see like, oh, it's very pretty, but they don't specifically see like, oh, that's a $500.
They're not writing the
light
brand
fixture,
down?
no, in any way, or this is a $500-$600 kitchen faucet. Like, no, like as long as it looks cosmetically nice and appealing and new, they would just categorize it as like very high quality or anything like that. Like good, medium, like those are the names that they kind of use. So that's why it's interesting to have this conversations with professionals like you, or an appraiser that we have, or myself, that we have connections with appraisers too, of like, okay, what actually brings some value to the properties for those renovations. So let's say, and I'm just gonna start off the bat, depending on the homes that you have, but adding a bedroom, probably one of the biggest. Finishing a basement, like if a basement's completely finished, that's gonna add value. You would have obviously an addition, a kitchen, a bathroom, like depending where you're at, these will create more appealing for rentals coming into. So like, what difference is it? And I'm going to use the Glebe as an example because it's common for this.
Sure.
It's amazing location. A lot of the apartments are run down, but because of the location, they're trying to get top dollar for it. Right now, that strategy is not necessarily working because the rental market is not at the highest, at the peaks.
A little bit, sure.
But when you were talking, when almost nobody could get into the market and they were renting, those apartments were renting top dollar, even though they didn't look as great.
Yeah, so is an appraiser looking at the rent rolls on these too?
Correct. So that's where I was going to get to, where it's like they also look at what the rents are. in investment properties, be it a duplex, triplex, fourplex, fiveplex, whatever you want to go for in terms of plexes, but even on the single family homes, when you have a rental market that's higher, especially if you're refinancing a rental or it's going to become a rental, those market rents, they use market rents, which is essentially what would that specific unit or property rent for in the current market.
Yeah.
Especially if it's on a higher end, right? So that's very important because it means that where are you putting your dollar to top value?
Yeah.
Where is it creating the most value for it, right? So those are like adding a bedroom, finishing a basement, a kitchen, a bathroom. Like these are things that are upgrades are worth it, not just for the person that's going to be living in it, but also for in terms of valuation of homes,
right,
for it. We had a common client that did the garage, for example.
Oh yes,
and
I remember
that didn't create as much as it created a value for
thought it
them.
was very valuable.
Exactly, it did not really create value on the appraised aspect of it.
No,
and
he and I did not see eye to eye on that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't think that he was frustrated at the end of it. I think it was just more of like, I can't believe that I did this.
No one sees
and like, and then for you, it was like you didn't, not necessarily that you didn't see value in it, because I know you did, especially with your carpentry background. But you were trying to pitch it in a way of like, whoever's buying this might not necessarily see the high value of it compared to if you would have used that funds to renovate the kitchen.
On a sidebar like that, like, this client, he did a fantastic job, insulating and renovating, finishing, I'll say, not renovating, with this garage.
Mm-hmm.
Again, someone who spends a lot of time in the garage might find value in that. Someone who just parks their car and leaves their recycling in there is going to be like, yeah, it's a nice garage. What do you want me to say? Like, I'm not going to pay any more for this.
Correct.
You know what I mean? It exists, and that's nice. Maybe some people treat pools the same way too. Right?
Exactly.
It's kind of one of those things where maybe an appraiser doesn't. I'm sure, like, yes, having a pool obviously boosts the appraised value of it.
It kind of depends, but
yeah,
yes.
yeah. But you know what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it kind of along those lines of like, it's not a very standard, dollar for dollar renovation.
Not at all. And that's where a lot of the times, like when we're dealing with investors and clients like this, it's like we gotta make sure that we let them know or educate them in these things of like, okay, these are renovations. What are renovations you're gonna do? And I always like having these conversations because like I've been doing them for him. Yes. Yeah. So what's the long term goal of it? What is your budget and what's your plan accordingly?
What do you want to do?
What do you want to do? Okay, and then we pivot accordingly. If it seems like perfectly fine, I'm like, amazing, go for it. Like, it's perfect. If there's most of the times there's a little bit of adjustments, like it's just kind of depends on where we have to maximize the dollar that we can.
Yeah, it's a very good point, right? Like if you're an investor or versus an end user, and you're renovating a bathroom, like an investor is in no way in hell they're going to go out and spend $600 on a faucet. I just refuse to believe that. Whereas an end user in a high-end home may actually do that, but at the end of the day, the high-end person refinancing is going to need the money for likely different reasons than the investor would.
Correct.
So I think that comes back to that first question of like, what do you want to do?
What is your goal for this whole equation of it?
And how much do you need too, right?
Exactly.
Like that's are you pulling it all out? Do you only need some of it? Like what does that look like? Right?
Yeah, and one of those things that I didn't mention was like, let's say in a refi, the maximum allowed that you refinance from the value of the property is 80%.
Break that down on a very simple number so everyone's following.
So like, let's say for example, and I'm gonna pull out my calculator.
Yeah, I'll throw the scenario at you. Okay, say I bought the house for $400,000.
Correct.
And then it gets appraised at $600,000.
Okay.
So I've got $200,000 above and beyond what I've purchased it for, plus whatever I paid down on my mortgage. So let's say I paid down to $350,000.
So there's $50K.
Yeah, so there's a $250,000 spread from what's left on the mortgage and what it's currently appraised at.
So So let's say, for example, if it was $600, if it came to $600,000 in terms of valuation, and your mortgage was the maximum you could borrow off that, like new mortgage, new money is $480. That's 80% of 600.
Okay.
And then you subtract your current mortgage because you have to pay that off.
Yep. So
You
the
can't.
350 has to come off.
So the
that.
350 has to come off that 380. So what does I leave you with? It's 130.
Right. I think that's a big misconception, right? A lot of people are probably thinking like, oh, 250 grand, I can just pull that out.
Oh, fully, yes.
Yeah.
But there's limitations to it.
Of course.
Like nowadays, especially, like there's rules that you can't go past 80%.
Yeah, and you have to qualify for this new mortgage too. So like if your job has changed, if you're not making as much money, maybe you lost your job and you still need this money. That kind of puts a monkey wrench into everything too, because bank's not going to give you a new mortgage for more money if you don't have the income to support it.
And that's why it's best to have the conversations with like a broker beforehand and be like, what can we do, and be completely transparent. Like, this is where your situation is. It's okay. Life happens. Things happen. You know, like there's debts. We just came out of a very uncertain time to go into another somewhat uncertain time. But it's part of life. You know, it's just seeing what you can find a solution and talking to the right people about this stuff.
Sure.
Because and I can't express this enough, a lot of times a lot of clients wait till the last minute of having this conversation, and at that point it might be too late for it, or the solutions we can offer are very restrictive or very expensive, that yes, they might solve it for a short term, but it's not a long-term solution.
Yeah, they're going to repeat the same cycle, get back into the same problem, and then it's like, well, there's nothing left in the house to refinance,
and it's a whole hamster wheel at that point, right?
Yeah.
And that's if property are increasing, which majority of the times they are. But let's say we were going between 2022 and 2023 where the prices were decreasing, then you're in a tighter situation. So that's why I'm like, the moment you start seeing where like things are getting tough or in any way, like have a conversation. It's just a quick phone call. And I know that it's very hard sometimes, because like it kind of bruises that ego.
As human beings, we don't want to. It's like so weird that we find it awkward to ask for help sometimes. Like you're embarrassed of the situation. And again, like this is probably more in the scenario of like someone needing the money to pay the debt. Maybe the opposite would be if someone needs the money and they're flush with cash and they just want to use it to purchase and finance another one. Yeah. But I think you're right. Like people, it's a tool that you can use to get out of a jam. And a lot of people maybe don't even realize they can do that. You know what I mean? If the credit card debt is piled up, especially after Christmas, you guys see a lot of this, correct? Yeah. At the end of the year, the holidays, people check their statements come January.
February, that's usually when we start seeing a few of those.
100%.
But it's the tool that's possible. And this is where like I find it a little bit interesting, is like, instead of using the home as a bank, call it, to like use the funds for the home, the equity you have available, a lot of times they go for credit cards and lines of credit, which you don't realize that it's essentially more expensive in the long run 100%. Because the interest rates are higher. Like you're talking credit card interest rates are like at 20 something percent. Lines of credit interest rates are right now, in prime has gone down, are probably around anywhere between 8 to 10%. But then if you were to do it on a mortgage, and obviously like everyone's case different, maturity dates might not line up, or they might not have essentially to qualify for it, but there might be solutions available. But on a mortgage, you're talking maybe 4-5%, call it, and I'm just being like very conservative in terms of those rates. That's like half of what you would be paying on interest, right? But it's just like thinking of like, I don't want to put more debt into my house. And I'm like, yeah, but it's better for you to have that debt on the house because it's a lower interest. You pay it down quicker than having it on a credit card.
And not to mention, here'd be a fun exercise. Not that I'm ever going to do this, but in my mind, it sounds pretty interesting. You know, if you were to look at the difference between the interest rates, like on your mortgage versus a high, let's say a 22% credit card or something like that, the difference in interest that you could pay over 3 to 5 years if you're at max balance on your credit card. Like imagine if you were to take that extra money you would have paid on the card interest and lump summed it on your mortgage.
It's almost double what it's like you'd be saving half basically.
And then you can just throw it back down on the mortgage.
Yeah. The thing that's concerning, I think a lot of the times, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, is that a lot of the times clients believe, or as an individual, we believe that if we do that and we empty the credit cards, then we have a vicious cycle that we're just gonna restart that again. You know, you still have to have some control. Yeah, exactly. 100%. Because it's like, okay, like, yeah, we're exiting you out of this. We have a lifeline, but we don't want you to go back to exactly the same point, right? So that's where it's like, and spending habits are different. And we have this conversation off mic a lot of the times. And I have a pet peeve where I think that this subject of financing, personal financing, should be taught in high school,
Agreed.
because it's not fair for somebody coming out of high school and like young teen coming out of high school at 17, 18 years old to then have access for education credits or credit cards for them to start a university. Like, they don't fully comprehend what are the consequences of it.
Yeah.
You know, I've in some cases have had clients like they weren't aware that they had to pay it back. They thought it was just free money.
Yeah, they go into Canadian Tire to get a screwdriver or something, and they come out with a $15,000 limit credit card or something, right?
And especially on that point, because like their credit is so young, it might be higher, you know,
Yeah, it's
or it might be around like because you start off at a certain amount. It's like, okay, here we go. Of course, so you're not going to start at the bare bottom of it, like, you know. So it's just having that conversation, and I think that it's the education system has basically put that conversation on parents, and a lot of the time, parents don't necessarily have the conversation with kids because
the parents may not even know either.
Exactly.
They weren't
One
taught it either,
or
right?
or two, they might not have that because like they might be embarrassed because they have debt or anything like that. But like for me growing, and I'm very grateful for my parents for this, growing in the household that I did, they were open about it. Like we were having conversations in lunchtime and they were talking about business, or they were talking about like payments of debts and anything like that. So I got that knowledge coming in. So it was, I was grateful for it, other than the fact that they made me work, which I'm like, okay. In the moment, it was probably like, why? But now that you see it, you hindsight, it's like, it's incredible. But like going back to the conversation about refi, like if we go back to the example that I was working on, it's 130 that you can pull out.
Right.
So that 130 kind of depends on what you want to do. Do you want to refinance the home? Do you want to renovate the home, improve it? Do you want to pay debts off? Or do you want to buy another property?
Sure.
So I'm going to use the example of the third one of buying another property, because I've had it with some clients, and they end up using the down payment. They end up taking that for the down payment of their new purchase. They have savings additionally to it, like if it's added, or sometimes they don't. Then it's just what they're taking out is to buy the other one, right? But what's incredible about this, or what sometimes we have to see past the front hurdle that we get, is that in some cases the property that they just refinance might be cash flow negative based on what they rented for.
Sure.
But the difference is you can expense the interest rates payment, like the interest on the monthly payments that you're doing, or biweekly on your mortgage payments, but you can't do that on your owner occupied.
Right.
You can do it on the investment properties, because that's an expense essentially for you to carry that. And like I always, and we've done this in a presentation of first-time home buyers, and luckily I had my friend who was an accountant in the audience, and like I got him to confirm this, and obviously like it is like, it's not necessarily it's a gray area. No, like it's actually possible. But then yes, you're in a cash flow negative slightly, and we always try to make it controllable, right? Like on a slightly basis. But then on your main residence, your mortgage is lower.
Sure.
So then you're paying less on the main residence than if you try to keep it leveled,
You're
right?
trying to keep it even everywhere. You don't have the tax break.
Exactly.
Paying
So that
on the other side
helps, because then it's like the income that you're generating. You can't expense your principal payment because that's part of the debt, but you can expense the interest on it. So that's why I always try to have this conversation and like basically try to drill it in as much as I can. It's like, put the bigger mortgage on your investment property and put the smaller mortgage on your home.
Right.
As much as you can, right? And it's just so that specifically for these tax purposes, like we're not tax professionals, so obviously confirm these with your accountants and stuff like that. But that's what I've personally done in a couple, and I know some clients that have succeeded in that. Like I saw it a lot, like just after COVID, or like in the middle of it, where like I was saying, like one individual refinanced their place, took out the equity, and then with their partner or significant other went and bought something else, and they bought a bigger home, started their lives, and all that went smoothly, you know. It worked out perfectly.
I like it. And I think to the numbers, if it makes sense, you know, it gives people a lot of financial freedom or financial relief, whatever the case may be, whatever side of the coin it is. I think something to be understated, especially like given people our age or similar. Like, for example, I have a client, he's exploring options. We've seen a few properties now, kind of has an idea of what he wants to spend. So we've seen everything, and we started kind of condo towns. He went, nah, I don't really love the condo fee. Fair. he can afford a freehold.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move there instead. So in and around the freehold price, let's say high fives to mid sixes, we've seen everything like fully complete at the 650 or near mark. And then we've seen, 580 that needs a bit of work. And I said to him, like, what's your plan? Again, it comes back to that. Well, what's the goal? Like, are you going to be here forever? Like, is this a 5 year? Is that 10 year? Like, where do you see yourself? Where are you guys going to be? And, he wasn't really sure. He said, it'd be kind of up in the air. Like, obviously, they don't really have any plan to start a family that I'm aware of at this point. But, things change pretty quickly, especially when you get to our age. It snowballs quickly.
Big time.
Yeah, big time. So I said to him, like, listen, what I think you should do is probably look at something that needs a little bit of work. I know you're not super handy. We have people that can help with that. But let me tell you why. He has some savings. He will be getting a gift, or like let's call it a loan. I don't know. I think he has to pay it back. But he has a gift from mom and dad.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. Sorry, yeah, it's a gift. There's no names. But let's say let's say whatever. There's an understanding that he has to give it back to his parents at some point, right? Because I think his parents are fantastic people. I've met them many times, but it's like more of like it's a principle thing. You know what I mean? Like
it's more of, I think that, okay, in the eyes of the parents, it's a gift, and it's like they want to gift them that money. But then in the eyes of the client, might be just like, I want to eventually pay them back.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in the time of the transaction, it's a gift.
100%. Exactly. On paper, it's a gift.
Exactly.
There's a kind of an understanding, a head nod going on behind closed doors. But I said to him, listen, if that's the case, and you want to like be able to thank your parents sooner, let's say thank. That's the best way to put it. Why don't we look at options that need a little bit of work? Like maybe you can update a kitchen. You can update the bathroom. You could add a powder room. There's ways for them to get in. Do that over the next 5 to 10 years. It doesn't have to be immediate. And then I said to them, then you refinance, you pull the cash out, you thank your parents, and then you move on. Right?
Yeah, and you can do that.
Literally.
Like it's like
He was like, oh, I didn't realize that was even a thing. I'm like, yeah, of course. Like that's how a lot of people move up the ladder quickly.
It's like you getting so think about it this way, and I think that everybody's played this game, Monopoly.
What game is that?
Monopoly, the game that divides families sometimes in family dinners. It's like we're not family,
Yeah,
we're not any associated. But it's
the
like
game my brother threw off the table when he was leaving. Sore loser.
That's usually what happens. But in Monopoly, like you play it in this way. You start with a little hotel,
yeah,
and you move to the house, then a second little house, and then a third little house, and then it's a big hotel, big red. So it's actually literally slightly improving it as you go.
This is how people in Canada learned about finances.
Playing a game and then just flipping the table. It's like, can I go to the back and just flip the tables? But this is where I'm like saying, like it's you starting small in small pockets like that, right? Like I think that, and a lot of times, like, and everybody's mentality, I feel on that is different. Some people just want to get their mortgage, get their house paid off, and then
nothing
be done.
wrong with that.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's other ways to creating wealth, which is, okay, you wait for the property to appreciate, you pull out equity, re-amortize it, because at the end of the day, it's an investment property. It's going to pay itself. But like I said, you're putting the bigger chunk of the debt in an investment, in a rental property. Then you put that on your main residence, right? So like, let's say I'm going to use a friend's client example, and it's like he bought a duplex in Sunnyside area.
Okay.
What was it? 2020, just before COVID. No, 2019 actually, just before COVID happened, because actually 2021. Sorry, I'm confusing because. So eventually, bought this place. It's a duplex in the time. It was a 3-person partnership. One of them, their brothers and spouse. One of them moved into it. Right, lived there for a year. For a time, he was single, and it worked out. Then they started increasing the units while he was there.
Right.
Increased one of them, renovated. Increased the rent. Then somebody else moved out. They increased that rent. But then the crazy idea, and like I salute him for this, because I would have thought about it, especially given a semi-duplex, right? He's like, I'm gonna I'm gonna create a unit underneath.
Sure.
So
Love it.
basically, he had a foundation. He had to pin it to
Okay.
like excavate it and stuff like that. But by him doing that, in terms of valuation, now it's a triplex.
Yeah. He bumped it into the upper.
Like
stratosphere.
he did a lot of the work, and like luckily he was in construction in that period. He knew the trades. He had the context for this, right? So obviously, in terms of budgeting, it was helpful because it didn't cost him how it would have if you or I would go to do this, right? So he did that, renovated, pinned it, and valuation like will most likely come like way just the fact that yes, it appreciated from the time that he bought it to now, yes, but also the fact that there's another unit associated to it is just gonna increment it way higher.
Oh
So
yeah, it's gonna appraise. Like I said, it's gonna be. They're not even comparable anymore.
I think they bought it at 600 and something.
Yeah, it's probably $1 million now.
Yeah, so you're almost doubling in value by adding that. Yes,
Yeah.
there's some expenses, so you kind of have to remove that
Yeah,
to
yeah,
make
of
it
course,
to make
of
it
course.
realistic, right?
Yeah.
But then at that point, they're taking out the funds. Like we're gonna end up renovating, like refinancing this, re-extending the amortization. It's a rental property, but it's gonna give them probably like 400-500K like in total,
Nice.
which they're gonna split, however their split is. But then I know one of the parties is just gonna put it into their main residence and just so that it pays off, right? The other thing is, and this is how we've put it together, is that their residents, their main residents, have a mortgage, but also have a HELOC attached to them.
Right.
So, yes, they're dumping this and paying it off, but it doesn't mean that they lose access to it,
Yeah, the
because then
HELOC
at that
just gets
point the
bigger.
HELOC gets bigger.
Yeah.
So then it's like at any point, in case of any emergencies or in case any opportunity comes up, they have that available
Smart.
to take it out.
Very smart.
So it was just how we had it set up going from the start to the second to in every step by step as we're going. But it's having that relationship with a broker and an agent. And this is where, like I say, like interest rates are important. Yes, don't get me wrong. But having this knowledge, this experience of what you're doing, especially if you have long-term goals,
Yeah.
is way more important.
100%. Rates will always change.
Exactly. They will always
Never be the
fluctuate.
same.
You might not win as much in the purchase, but throughout the life of the mortgage, like we're going to do our best to get you the best rates possible and save you as much as money, right? But like I said, everyone's mentality and that's different. Some would just want to pay it off.
Fair.
That's it.
Yeah.
Clear. Others have a little bit more creative, but you're creating wealth as you're going with it. And like I said, like this property almost doubled in value.
Yeah.
And what you're talking 5 years.
Pretty cool.
So it's a success story in that way, right? Like, so it just kind of depends on what you end up doing. Like I had another client who did something similar. They finished the basement. I think their home originally was 500. Then after finishing the basement came up to 7. They pulled that equity, bought a cottage.
Nice.
So it's like it just depends what you want to do. There's so many options of it. It's just having those conversations, having that like, okay, what are your goals for that?
Yeah, I like it. And that's the thing. It starts with the conversation of, how do I get to my goal? What are the steps along the way? Where do the renovations need to happen, if any?
Mm-hmm.
And what the timeline is, it's pretty fascinating that this is, it's available to people. And it's another reason why home ownership, in my opinion anyway, will trump renting, even if it is a little bit more expensive on a month-to-month.
Totally.
In certain markets.
Totally. And I think it's just because of that extra factor. It's like the appreciation that you should most likely get
Sure.
on a yearly basis, and then the ability to force appreciate a property. Like, and every property type is different. So like, let's say it's harder to do something like this on a condominium. Like, I'm nothing against condos, but it's a little bit harder compared to a townhome, semi, or freehold. Like it's completely separate.
You're limited in what you can physically change at a condominium,
or the valuation that you can pull out of it.
Yeah.
Because it has to do a lot with the condo fees associated to it, right?
Yeah. Variables you can't control.
Exactly. But to each their own in ways of it. Personally, I think that it's one of the best vehicles in terms of creating wealth, especially generational wealth. Because even then, like if you have kids, they can inherit these properties and stuff like that. And it's like, obviously this is a topic for maybe another conversation. Like when that changes ownership, that's a subject for something else. But like they'll be able to continue this, right, of it. And like properties are just going to keep getting more expensive as we go. Like we're not trying to say like, oh, we're pumping the market, but it's go back 10 years ago. Like if you ask somebody, would you have bought 10 years ago? They would have immediately would say yes.
Yeah, of course. Anyone, like, if I could have my time back, I would have bought the first year out of high school.
If we could have.
Yeah, many properties. But no, I think that's a good episode, man. I think that broke down a lot of. Like, if anyone has any questions specifically about their own situations and what options they have or could have in the future, they should just reach out to one of us and get the ball rolling, right? Like, there's no bad time to have it, except when you leave it too late and you may have blown through a lot of options that you could have previously availed of. Yeah,
and I think it's important for you to talk and have these conversations, and who's doing your mortgages specifically, or your purchase, like when you're who's representing you for your purchases, of people that have actually done this.
Fair.
Because we can say that we walk the talk, you know.
Yeah.
And we've done this in the past. We kind of have an eye for it. Like if I go to a client's inspection or a client's walkthrough, I will start pinpointing the stuff that they can upgrade.
Sure.
Not because I want them deviate them from the purchase, no, but by saying like, hey, you could do this, hey, you could do this, you should do this, you know, stuff like that. It just gives you another set of eyes for it, right? So it's just having those conversations with professionals that actually have done this.
I love it.
You know?
I love it.
So
I love it. I love it. Okay.
I end up with that note.
That's right on time. It's a perfectly timed episode.
Wrap it up.
No, seriously, that was good, man. I appreciate that. That was a lot of good insight.
It was probably one of my favorite ways to do in terms of the clients. Yeah.
So because I'm sure that'll come off to anyone listening. So that being said, if you've liked this episode, can you please like it right now. Click it, like it, comment, share it, and reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, our information is below.
It's below, guys. Book a link to a meeting, actually, a one-on-one with our Calendly links in the description. Always there. Hopefully hear from you soon. Enjoy the weekend.
Enjoy the weekend. Take care. Enjoy the hot weather.
Stay cool. Stay cool. Stay thirsty, my friends.
Peace.
Bye.